If you were gifted sourdough starter for Christmas or your birthday or any time, and you're looking at that jar and you're thinking, what in the world do I do with this? Come hang out with me. My goal is to take all the mystery out of it so that you're not afraid of this amazing starter that's in the jar and you know exactly how to bake with it. First up, we're actually gonna put this jar of starter down and I'm gonna show you exactly what to do with all of those sourdough tools.
Turn your scale on and you're going to want to flip through the unit or the measurement until you get to where it says grams or G. That is how almost every sourdough recipe is written. And once you get used to using your scale, you are going to fall in love with it and want to find more and more recipes that use the scale. So we have the starter that you were gifted, but then you're also going to need another jar. I suggest that you get another pint-sized jar that's wide mouth. The wide mouth jars are just the easiest to pour into and stir in. And right now you only need a pint-sized jar, and then you're going to also need a lid for that. Set your jar on your scale and hit that button that says tare. That button cancels out all of the weight that's currently on the scale. So now it's going to read 0, even though our jar weighs 288 grams. When you put it on there, when you hit tare, it cancels it out so that the only measurement that we're going to see is what we're adding into the jar. The reason I like to use that tare button is because it cancels out all of that weight that's already on the scale, so you don't have to worry about adding. So we don't have to say, okay, we have this jar that weighs 288 grams, and now we're going to add 25 grams of starter. You don't have to figure out what that number is. When you hit tare, all you're going to focus on is the new thing that you're adding in. So with your starter that you got gifted to you, stir it up really good. If it has been waiting for a little while for you to use it, it might have a little liquid on top. That's okay. Stir it up really good. And we want to take 25 grams out of that jar. Now you need to name your starter. That starter is going to be your mother's starter. My starter at home is called Nigel. Our son named it Nigel. And then I can just say, oh, take 25 grams out of Nigel, which is my main starter jar. And that main starter jar actually lives in my fridge all the time. You're not going to have to baby it. And I'm going to put a link to a video down in the description below that shows you exactly how to keep your starter in the fridge so that you don't have to worry about feeding it and taking care of it every day. Now you'll see that the scale, it says 26, and I said put 25 grams in. If yours is flipping back and forth between 24 and 25 or 25 and 26, it's okay. You made it. You got to the spot that you need to be. Sourdough is not that fickle. You don't need to worry if you're 1 gram over, 2 grams over. It's okay. So we have 25 grams of starter in our jar on our scale. The jar that was your mother's starter that you're naming, so I'm going to call it Nigel because that's what ours is called. That jar is going to go straight back into the fridge and we'll worry about it later. But right now, what we're going to do is we're going to hit that tare button again so that it cancels out that weight. Now it just reads like there's nothing on the scale, and we're going to add 25 grams of water. Now I use water straight from our tap because we have really great water from an aquifer. If you don't like your water, if you feel like it has a strong taste, you can use bottled water, but you need 25 grams and you want it to be about room temperature. Then stir that up so that your starter gets a little bit diluted. It's going to be real liquidy in your jar right now. So what we're doing right now is your first feeding, and this would be a 1:1:1 ratio because we are going to do the exact same amount of starter, water, and flour. So if you see in a description of something and it says to do a 1:1:1 ratio, this is what they're talking about. They're saying use the same amount of starter, water, and flour. So now we're adding in that 25 grams, same amount, of flour. And when I feed my starter, I like to use all-purpose flour. It does a great job with feeding. If you're wanting to go with like whole wheat flour or go with like rye, anything like that, you can use any flour you want to feed your starter. It does give a little extra flavor to the bread when you feed your starter with rye, but choose the flour that you're wanting to use. All-purpose is great because we all have that in our houses anyways. Get that 25 grams of flour into your jar and stir it up. It's going to be pretty thick, kind of pasty. I just get it so that the flour is pretty much worked in, but your starter's probably going to look a bit lumpy and clumpy right now. That is normal. Then we're going to put that lid onto your jar. The lid shouldn't be closed down really tight. You want it to be loose, kind of baggy, where you can like pull it up and down a bit. And the reason why is because as your starter begins to feed on that flour, it's going to produce this natural gas, and we want there to be space for that to expand and also escape a little bit from your jar. So put this jar in a spot where it's going to be 65 to 70 degrees. If it's wintertime in your climate right now and it's really cold, just find a spot where it's going to stay pretty warm. And this is what the starter is going to do. It's going to start to look a little bit more glossy. You're going to start to see bubbles in it. This means that it's waking up. Yay, your starter is alive and well. It's waking up, and we're going to let it rest for 4 to 6 hours until it has completely fluffed up, and it should be doubled in size. If it is not doubled in size, I want you to go back to the very beginning of this first feeding and repeat it again, which means you would take some starter out of your jar and then you're going to feed just 25 grams again. When you take that starter out of your jar, don't get rid of it. Put it back into your main starter jar, your Nigel jar that's in your fridge. Anything you take out of your starter jar can go straight into there. But since my starter doubled in size, it's nice and fluffy and happy, it has lots of bubbles, we are going to do the second feeding. And the reason we're going to do 2 feedings is because we need more starter in order to bake the loaf of bread that we're going to make. So right now what I'm doing is I'm adding 75 grams of water. The reason why I'm doing 75 is because that's how much starter is in our jar. When we did our first feeding, we did 25 grams of each element, which gave us a total of 75 grams of starter. So I'm doing the same kind of feeding. It's a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio, but because I have 75 grams of starter that we're beginning with in the jar, that's what I'm gonna feed it in terms of water and flour. So mix that water up really good. Make sure that your starter is kind of diluted into it. And now we're gonna add in our flour. The reason that we're going to do this second feeding is because, yes, we need to have more starter in order for us to make a loaf of bread, but this also allows your starter to get stronger. You're giving it more food, which helps it to beef up, which means you're going to have a better loaf of bread. The stronger that your starter is when it is fed, the better your bread is because it's like having a stronger yeast. Sourdough starter is a natural kind of yeast. So if you have done a lot of baking in the past and you've used the instant dry yeast, sourdough starter is just a form of a natural yeast, just like that instant yeast, but it's not instant. And so that's where baking with sourdough is very different than doing any yeasted dough kind of baking. And I'm gonna bring you along with me. I have so many fun videos to help you bake. So don't feel like you're alone, okay? This video right now is just to help you get used to feeding your starter. And then at the end, we're gonna actually link you to the video to help you make your first loaf of bread. And if you're watching this video and you're thinking, oh, I don't have the scale I need, or I do need a Danish dough whisk, we put a link down in the description below. That's all of our favorite sourdough tools. I really try to be a bit of a minimalist, but there are a few tools that make sourdough bread making so much easier. So click down into the description below and you'll find all sorts of great links to the tools that we love to use, our full sourdough playlist, and we have some direct links to the next video that you're gonna need so that you can mix up a batch of dough, you can put it in your fridge to proof, and then you can also, there's a link down in the description for the next video that helps you shape your loaf of bread. So you can see I'm just scraping the sides of the jar because it got a little bit messy. Then I'm just loosely putting my lid on, and this jar is going to go back into a warm spot and it needs to rest for another 4 to 6 hours. What I like to do is do the very first feeding in the morning at around 8 a.m. Then at noon, when I have lunch, I do the second feeding. And then when it's dinner time, boom, my jar of starter is completely full. It's ready for me to mix up a batch of dough with. Then while I'm making dinner, I get my batch of dough mixed up. Throughout the evening, I do my stretch and folds. And then before I go to bed at night, my dough goes into the fridge and it just gets to rest in there overnight. And then tomorrow I can shape it and deal with baking. But this is what your starter should look like at this point. Real webby and kind of stringy as you pull it up. That means that it's fully aerated, that the sourdough starter has gobbled up all of the goodness and it's nice and fluffy. Now, if you got to that point in the evening and you're like, oh my word, or maybe it's not the evening and you're like, my starter has fluffed up completely and I don't have time to deal with it, put it into the fridge. It will hold in there and wait for you. The next day, you can mix up your dough. The starter can be used the next day from the fridge, and it's going to be just fine. It doesn't have to be used immediately, and it is okay if it begins to sink in your jar a little bit, because here's what you know. It's alive, it fluffed up, it rose, it hit that high rise, and then you're going to be ready to make some dough with it. Come hang out in the kitchen with me. I'll show you exactly how to make the dough. Let's take the mystery out of sourdough. I know that some of it can feel super overwhelming, and we don't want you to feel overwhelmed. We want you to have fun. We want you to enjoy filling your table with just the most delicious invitation to gather. So come join us at Cider Press Lane. We're so glad you're here in the kitchen with us, and we have so much fun baking to do. But let's not overwhelm you. Let's just get that sourdough starter fed and fluffy and get you feeling really comfortable feeding it and having fun baking.